I want to demonstrate for you how to throw a closed form. So in other words, how to create a form that closes completely in at the top, and then later you can actually cut the lid out of the top, making a lidded jar. It can be the start of a teapot, whatever you would like. You can also apply the concepts of a closed form to a form like a bud vase. So right now I have a piece of centered clay and I'm getting ready to pull up the walls. So I want to kind of show you the size of the piece of clay that I'm working with, and I'm going to make a small lidded jar form. So I'm going to focus as I'm pulling up the walls on pulling up and in. So rather than just pulling straight up or pulling out, I really want to make sure that I'm moving both my inside and outside hand in towards the center of the wheel. That will really help to keep this form under control. And I'm going to start out with really aiming for a cylindrical shape. I can then go back and bulge out the bottom and create the form that I would like. If it starts to flare out a little bit too much for you, I recommend just choking it in a little bit to really keep that rim under control so that it doesn't end up getting too flared out towards the top. So I want to focus on getting those bottom walls nice and thin. Now I can start thinking a little bit more about shape. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a nice bulb shape towards the bottom before I close in. So to create shape, I'm going to use my red rib tool. It is nice and soft, so it bends really easy. Now this part is going to be pushed in. But before I do that, before I close the form, I want to make sure I get that water out of the inside. Now I can begin choking that form in. And at the same time I'm doing this, I really need to be thinking about shape and what is going to make a really nice fluid looking shape. So as I'm pushing the walls in, those walls are kind of thickening up a little bit, so I'm going to pull those walls up a bit. And continue to choke the form in. Do not worry about this uneven rim. After I close it in, I will cut it off to create a knob. So I'm just going to continue to close and close until the entire form is closed at the top. So now I have a closed form with a very interesting looking knob. You can have your knob size really any size you would like. I'm going to take time to really make sure that this is centered up here. And I'm going to remove a little bit of clay from the top, but I do want to keep some of that clay up there. It's going to become the knob for my future lid. So now I can finish shaping that little knob. I want a graspable knob, so in other words, I want kind of like almost like a mushroom stem is how I usually explain it, with a ball at the top. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to probably create a little sculptural form to finish off this knob. So now I have a basic jar shape. I'm going to go back and really check this curve and see if I like this curve for the jar shape. So I'm going to glide the rib tool over the form and double check my shaping. Make sure there's nothing I want to change. So look towards the bottom. I have a really thick base down at the bottom. So I'm going to use a wood sculpting tool to remove some of that bottom edge. Get the wood sculpting tool wet. Cut into that base at an angle. And then take your needle tool, slide it underneath that ring, and then you can remove some of that clay from the base. I will later, after I cut the lid out, I will be flipping this over and trimming it. I'm probably going to cut the lid right about there, but it's way too wet to cut. That will come later. So my lidded jar that I threw with a closed form is stiff enough that I'm now ready to cut out the lid. So again, when I threw this form, I completely enclosed it, and then I did a little pinch on the knob that will help the lid lift off easily for function. So you can kind of see that in profile. It dips in. The finger hold will be absolutely wonderful. So now I want to cut this lid out. I am purposely cutting this lid out before trimming for several reasons. One reason being I would have to throw a chuck to flip this form into in order to trim it with that knob on there. So by removing this, I can go ahead and safely flip this form over for trimming, and it's going to be very easy. Another reason why I leave it attached to the bat is when I make this cut with the cleanup tool to remove the lid, I know that this form's completely centered when I do that. So you want to use the cleanup tool to make this cut, and you want to keep the tool very wet, and you're going to hold the tool at a 45-degree angle. I already sketched the line on there where I'm going to make the cut, and I just used a needle tool to do that. So I'm going to cut through at a 45-degree angle, and you want to keep dipping that tool in water as you go. If it dries out, then you could accidentally pop this pot, because I did pull a wire under it. You could accidentally pop the pot right off of the bat. So again, I'm going in at a 45-degree angle so that then I'm able to easily remove the lid. So now I have a lidded jar with kind of an automatic ledge because it's at a 45-degree angle cut. So I'm going to kind of offset this lid a little bit so you can see what the edge of the jar looks like. You can see there's a little 45-degree angle ledge. So now I can go ahead and flip this over, trim it, do any little tiny cleanups along the edge, but I have a lidded jar.